Okay. Well, we're in Proverbs chapter 15 today. And yeah, as always, excited to be diving into the Word of God. So we are going to be starting in verse 8 and 9. Take them together. It says, "The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he loves him who follows righteousness." Now, I know that I think in my Bible, maybe it's my old Bible. No, right, Proverbs 28:9. I knew I had that written down somewhere. One who turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer is an abomination. So the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination, but the prayer of the upright. So there we even see that the wicked, their prayer is an abomination. The way of the wicked is an abomination. Really what this all gets down to is that we're not saved by works. And that when Isaiah talks about all of our righteousness being like filthy rags, that's the idea, is that anything we think we could offer to God, but it's in and of ourselves, it's rejected if we are the wicked. Now, think of it this way. This is a great analogy, and I think it makes perfect sense, and it helps add clarity. If you are married, this will make more sense. But imagine, you're married, and your spouse is having an affair, but they bring you flowers. Doesn't work, right? It doesn't work to bring nice things when you're cheating on someone. Nothing you can do, right? All that's an abomination. Wouldn't it be an abomination? I mean, I think any one of you with a human heart in your chest, right, would agree with me on this, that if you knew your spouse was committing adultery regularly and they bring you chocolates, what if they buy you a new car? Doesn't matter how big the gift is. It's an abomination. It's like, no, this is sick. And imagine this now. What if the spouse who's cheating knows that you know, and they're not even hiding it from you? But I bought you a new this. It's an abomination. And so God is saying here simply, the sacrifice, whatever offering you bring. Proverbs 28, the prayer. You want to say nice things. You want to have a conversation. The entire way of the wicked, it's an abomination to the Lord because they're rejecting him. Ultimately, they are committing spiritual adultery. And that's what the Bible uses as a picture often in the Old Testament, that God says, you're committing adultery on me. You're off with idols. You're off serving other things. And so it doesn't matter what we give God if we're committing adultery. Now, again, it's the way of the wicked, the wicked, the wicked. It's not talking about believers who are stumbling. And you know what? Adultery is never used in the Bible as an illustration of a believer who's put their faith in Jesus, who loves God, and yet stumbles in sin, even in great sin. Even in great sin, the Bible doesn't use adultery as that example because God doesn't see it that way. He also sees his children. He knows their weakness, their feebleness. He knows that they only have so much strength. And when they stumble, he understands. There is a part of the book, The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, where a senior demon is giving instructions to a junior demon. And one thing he warns him about is this place. He says, at this point, the battle is all but lost. If you're human, if the Christian that you're supposed to be tormenting and pestering gets to this place, well, then it's all but lost. And of course, he refers to God as the enemy. That's one of those funny things when you read Screwtape Letters, is you have to remember that the enemy is speaking of God. But it says that, that he is just excited to see them learn to walk. but then he'll let go of them and make them walk on their own. And he'll even make them walk with him not in the room. And they'll stumble and they'll fall. And he almost even seems pleased to see them stumble and fall as long as they just keep walking and trying to walk. And he goes, and if they get to this place where they'll keep getting back up again and keep trying to walk, even when their father's not in the room, he goes, the battle's all but lost at that point. The senior demon tells the junior. You see, God doesn't see your failures the same way you see your failures, as long as he's got your heart. To the unbeliever, that should terrify them, because God doesn't care about their works. God doesn't care about a single good deed that they've ever done. He just sees their hearts. And he knows that at the end of the day, they don't love him. They don't know him. And so no matter what kind of lip service they think that they can play, or how insulting it is to God when someone even would call themselves a Christian, but ultimately they think that they can be a Christian because of how good they are. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think of an analogy of that. I was just thinking about going back to marriage. It's like, imagine someone who thinks that they can call themselves your spouse. Well, yeah, I'm her husband. But you're like, we're not even married. Who is this guy? Because he never actually entered into the covenant of marriage with you. And so we see this, that the wicked, it's an abomination. Whatever good they think they might do, it's an abomination to God, because ultimately, the only way to hell is over Jesus' dead body. And now as a parent, if you have children, if you don't have kids, you can try to understand, but it's not the same because you don't have kids. But if you have kids, and you could fathom, if you could even imagine, because I think it's almost unimaginable, that there would ever be something that you would trade your kid for, that you would sacrifice your kid for. And then someone says, I know that you gave your child to make this happen, but I'm just going to try and do it on my own anyway. Just what kind of a disgrace that is, what kind of an abomination that is. Yet on the flip side of it all, God sees the heart of the believer. You see, believers sometimes kick themselves and worry and wonder, like, I can't believe I'm doing this stuff. I don't even know if I'm saved. You know what? People who aren't born again don't think that way. Most people who aren't born again don't worry about that. In fact, they just assume they're born again and they're good to go. Ironically, it's only the believers who have been born again that when they sin, it grieves them so much that they start questioning their own salvation. And that's only when, again, somehow in our minds, we mistakenly believe that salvation was ever about works. If me being right with God ever had to do with me not sinning, well, then I'm in trouble. But when I just get back to the gospel, when I get back to the good news, it was never about me anyway. It was just about receiving what he did for me. That can take a load off. You know, that's one thing I love about the idea of libertine free will, about the idea that we have the ability to accept God's gift of salvation. I'm going to go on. I don't want to pick on my brothers because I highly respect them, but a Calvinistic view of salvation, that God does all the choosing, that God selects who will be saved and who will be damned, and that God regenerates you like before you ever decide to follow him, that he does the work and it's totally, you're not involved in that decision at all, then I might actually even question my salvation, because maybe God didn't choose me. Because sometimes I act like I'm not one of the chosen, and maybe God didn't choose me. Well, now I'm in a pickle, because now I don't know. Even though grace is free, maybe I haven't been chosen to receive that grace. But when you believe that whomsoever wills may come, when you believe that God so loved the world, the whole world, see, that's the idea, is God so loved the entire globe, every human being, that he gave his son so that whosoever amongst those of the world believes on him may not perish but have everlasting life. Well, now I'm in a better position because all I need to know is I know what he did for me, and I know that I want that, and I want to be a part of it because I recognize my need for it. And then I can know in my heart, okay, I know I've received this gift because he offered it, and I know how desperately I need it, and now I never have to be worried about whether or not I have it. I don't have to worry about do my works, this and that, because again, I just recognize it was all about him and what he did. So the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. If you're not born again, then it doesn't matter what you give, what you do, what you pray. It's all an abomination because you're doing it in the face of Jesus. You're doing it rejecting his gift of grace, thinking that somehow you can do better. You can do better than God the Father sacrificing his only begotten son. Well, I think that, I think I can do good enough good deeds. I can do it without that. The way of the wicked is an abomination. But again, the prayer of the upright is his delight. Guys, he loves to hear your prayers. He loves to hear from his kids. It's wonderful when a 2-year-old comes tromping into the bedroom, jumps up on the bed and just says, I love you. God delights in your prayers. He wants to hear from you more often. And he loves him who follows righteousness. It's not he loves him who is righteous, who follows righteousness. God sees your heart. He knows who you want to be. He knows how weak and feeble you are and why it is you stumble at being who you want to be. But he's proud when he sees his little kids striving after the things of God, doing the things that make him proud. When you fall, he's okay with that. Just get back up again and keep going. All right. We knocked out a whopping 2 verses today. Hopefully they were a blessing to you like they were to me. You guys have an amazing day. And midweek service tonight at Revival Church.